They would be like, you're not going to know love until you have children. And I'm like, I didn't know love until I met my husband. Like I had been treated certain ways in past relationships. And then I finally became who I was meant to be when I was loved right. And so like, I'm like, some people find a special love in their children. I found it in my husband, and that's okay too.
Welcome to Signs from the Other Side with Fern Ronay. I'm your host, Fern Ronay, and this is the place to share stories of signs and messages received from the other side. Real quick before we get started, if you enjoy reading about signs and if you enjoy fiction like Bridget Jones and Sex and the City, you might enjoy my books, Better in the Morning and Better Believe It. And if you like this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe in Apple Podcasts and tell a friend too. Thank you so much for listening, and on to the show.
Decision to have children or not.
Yeah. So I'm in this like podcast, like women's podcasting group, and people are always looking for podcast guests. And I'm like, I'm always happy to talk about my husband and my decision not to have children. And nobody ever asked me to come on there. So I'm like, I'm going to talk about it on my podcast finally, because people are so assumptive and judgmental, and I feel like it prevents conversation. And it prevents people from sharing and learning from each other instead of being inquisitive and open and honest. And so I wrote a blog post for Chicago Now in 2013 called 6 Assumptions Not to Make About the Child-Free. And I wrote it because my husband and I got married, and instantly people are like, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? And I was like, I don't know. Like we were both kind of like on the fence. So he had cancer when he was 21. He had Hodgkin's, and so he preserved like his little fish in case someday he wanted to have kids. And so I always knew in the back of my mind, like, okay, you know, like, well, I got married at 34. I was like, if we want them, we want them. We're on the fence. We're both on the fence. And then as time went on, we realized like the things that we value, and it's okay. Like your values are like not a thing to be judged. Everybody's values are different. So like ours were like, we value freedom and creativity. Like that's what we want. And some people want, their values are like, we want to have children and raise them. And that's their purpose. And that's beautiful too. So when I was 38 and he was 43, we were like, I think like, this is it. Like we're not going to do it. Like it's the right decision for us is to not have children. People were so judgmental, like so.
What do you mean?
Like, yeah.
What do you mean?
So like people would say things like, who's going to take care of you when you're old? And I'm like, that's the one thing that I worry about. I'm like, I don't know. But like those last 10 years, they might suck. But like the 50 leading up to them should be fabulous. I don't know. Like I can't have kids like for that reason.
No. Yeah. You can't just, no, that's horrible.
Right.
That's stupid.
Right. But people would say things like that, or they would be like, you're not going to know love until you have children. And I'm like, I didn't know love until I met my husband. Like I had been treated certain ways in past relationships. And then I finally became who I was meant to be when I was loved right. And so like, I'm like, some people find a special love in their children. I found it in my husband, and that's okay too.
And they got to criticize you for that?
Yeah,
Come on. Oh my God. You're not missing. Listen, they make it like you're missing out on something.
Right.
Or you're just not following the typical process.
Right. And it bothers
Whatever
people.
works for people. People should shut up and
Yes.
just embrace what your decisions are. People just let people be. This is what they choose to do. But we live in a critical society, so this is what it is.
It's amazing to me. And so like I always say, I love being married, but if I, meet someone who's single, I would never say to them like, you have to be married. What if being married to them is the way I think about having kids? It just like doesn't feel right to them in their gut. Then don't do it. Like if you want to be single, be single. If you want 10 kids, I pray you have 10 happy, healthy children. I think everyone should I want everyone to get whatever they want, but what everyone wants is different, and that's okay.
For someone that has kids to hang out with somebody that doesn't have kids, oh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I'm ready for that. That's a whole different vibe for me that I would embrace and just add that into my wisdom, my knowledge, my experience.
Right.
See, I would embrace the difference. I would embrace the difference and go with it. In today's world, I wouldn't feel bad if my children did not have children.
Yeah.
Have your career,
Yeah.
enjoy your life,
Yeah.
travel the world, get a couple of houses,
Yeah.
and do that.
And have fun. From a spiritual aspect, like you mentioned, it was on episode 11, like you were like, it's not just signs from the other side. Like you can have an umbrella of things that you talk about. And I'm like, yes. And I was like, I never talk about like some life choices that are, like I think some people might benefit from hearing. And so I'm like, I should talk about this on my own podcast. So this year, I relaunched my podcast on July 1st, and I'm going to do 20 episodes through November. And then next year, I'm doing 20 episodes over 10 months. So I'll do every other week instead of every week because I need some breathing room. But next year is the 25th anniversary. So the first 10 episodes, I have some guests who reach out to me and I'll have them on. But the last 10 I would like to dedicate to 9/11 families. And I did this on the 20th anniversary. I interviewed 5 9/11 families who all had stories of signs from the other side. And they were all wonderful. And I want to do it again next year. So I'll open my podcast to anyone who wants to tell me their stories of signs or just talk about their loved one. And every year I tell the story of, his name was Wells Crowther. He went to Boston College undergrad. I went to BC for law school. And from the BC community, I learned about him. And I share his story every year because I feel like every year someone else is like, I didn't know that story. So I feel like it's such a helpless feeling on 9/11 that if I can share his story every year and one more person learns about it, it feels like I'm helping in some way. But his story does involve a sign. So his name was Wells Crowther. He was 26 years old, I think. And he always carried a red bandana with him. So when he was younger, his father always had a blue bandana and they gave him a red bandana. So when his mother was doing the laundry, she would know who this is. And he always had it with him. He played lacrosse. He would wear it under his helmet. And then he went to BC. He became an equities trader. He was working in the World Trade Center. And his coworkers would tease him about it. You always have that red bandana. He said, this bandana is going to change the world. On 9/11, he didn't come home. And 6 months later, his mother was reading the New York Times, and she was reading accounts of people in the World Trade Center who were led out by a man. So he led all of these people to an open stairwell, and then he carried one woman down several flights of stairs on his back. And then he got them all out, and then he went back in. And they don't know who he was. He wasn't a fireman. All they remembered was he was an office worker who, when the smoke became too intense, wrapped a red bandana around his mouth. And his mother was reading that. So on that day, I have no doubt that he led his mother, as he does, to read the paper on that particular day and read those particular accounts and see that. And she was like, I knew it was him. So he was a true hero. And a lot of people don't know his story, even though there's a documentary called The Man with the Red Bandana. It's my great honor to share his story every year, and I do. And I would like to open my podcast up again next year to 9/11 families and anyone who wants to tell me their story.
Thank you so much for listening to Signs from the Other Side. You can find me, Fern Ronay, on all social media at Fern Ronay, Ronay. I love hearing from you, and I love hearing your stories of signs. And if you would like to hear more episodes of this show, please be sure to subscribe in Apple Podcasts. Thank you again, and sweet dreams.